Welcome to Tech Talks. I'm Holly Scott. Today I have the pleasure of visiting with John Konsin. He is the CEO of Propella. Hi, John.
Hey, Holly, good to see you.
Good to see you also. I'm so glad you joined us from beautiful Maine today, right?
Yep, downtown Portland, Maine.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I've been fascinated by the Propella technology and following it for the last few years through the MedTech Innovator cohort organization, and it's just been amazing to watch. But you've had a lot of good news, so I wanted to make sure that we were able to tell the world about what's going on there because you know from us knowing each other now for some time, innovation's close to my heart. Our industry is absolutely fascinating, and what you're doing here has not only potential for an immediate population that hasn't been served, but my wheels are turning for big picture, not only as an advocate for the industry, but as a mom. So thank you for your hard work, and I can't wait to dig in.
My pleasure, and thanks for this opportunity today to be with you.
Absolutely. So why don't we start? You had time with some of the major medical companies in the world, right? You've been along the big road. Tell us a bit about your career and your journey to Propella, because I love hearing, and especially the audience that listens, we love hearing about what brought you to this, because everyone's road is different.
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to briefly discuss that. I was very fortunate. Right out of grad school, I got recruited into 3M corporate headquarters as a marketing analyst. And the opportunity at 3M was to experience all the different technologies and business sectors that 3M operates in. And frankly, coming out of an MBA program, I really wasn't 100% sure what industry sector I was excited to do marketing work in. And through my years at 3M, I discovered that I really love life sciences. I love medical devices. I love the idea of working with physicians and clinicians in general, nurses, and understanding deeper some of the challenges that exist in medicine and the challenges they have in providing good quality care. So I got exposed to life sciences, and that was way back in the early 80s, and I've been in it ever since. From there, I got recruited into Kimberly Clark's healthcare division and learned about disposables, surgical gowns, and drapes. From there, I leapfrogged into high tech medicine. I got a job with ATL Ultrasound at the time, which was later acquired by one of the big majors, to say the least. And that was unbelievable experience for me because I had global responsibility for marketing, and it broadened my horizons of what all the opportunities there are in the world for US medical devices and the competition that exists globally for technology and innovation. From there, I moved to Boston and got a fantastic job with Siva Corning. It was my first global responsibility job at a VP level in marketing, and learned about the diagnostic industry and tried to make my impact there with the world's fastest immunoanalyzer. And that led to an opportunity later on to lead Smith & Nephew's global business and sports surgery from a marketing perspective. After that, I received my first general manager role at Smith & Nephew. I got recruited out of Smith & Nephew to work for a company that made components for all the big med device companies around the world. And I had 10 manufacturing plants reporting to me, 20,000 employees, and was traveling around the globe learning about all our facilities, but also what the needs were of med tech companies that I used to compete against. From there, I got a GM job doing sports surgery again, jumped back into that. And then shortly thereafter, I got my first CEO role with a mid-cap company out on the West Coast and tried to transform it from a product company to a true pain management company focused on all the needs of pain management physicians. After 5 years of running that company and shepherding it through some of the most significant changes to the pain management industry, specifically TENS devices that were dropped for coverage by CMS, and getting the company to survive that, which was 60% of our revenue, by the way, that disappeared within 6 months. I found myself consulting at Harvard's Wyss Institute. And lo and behold, after 1 year there, I was introduced to this amazing technology that's the foundation of Propella.
So John, after that kind of career path, and now here you are with Propella, tell us about what lit you up about the technology, because it's really interesting and there's so much about it that I find fascinating, but I'd love to hear from your perspective because of your background, what you were drawn to.
Yeah, so like anything in life, it's multifactorial. There were several different things that kind of grabbed me all at once. Um, to think of, hey, I'm going to do a startup. When I did consulting at Harvard's Wyss Institute, I didn't go in thinking, I'm going to identify technology and do a startup. That wasn't what I was thinking at all. In fact, I was thinking, well, this will be a good place for me to spend some quality time, learn about new technologies, and then probably land another CEO role at an established company. So let me take you through some of the factors. About a month before I was introduced to this technology, my stepson suffered from a opioid overdose in our house. And luckily, we had Narcan on, and my wife and I were able to revive him. And it was pretty traumatic, the entire event. He's doing great now, which is wonderful. 8 years clean, and we couldn't be more proud of him. A month later, this technology was introduced to me, and among its many benefits was its ability to help newborns exposed to opioids before birth recover during withdrawal from that opioid exposure. And that really hit me hard. But that wasn't just it, right? There was strong clinical evidence that Harvard had worked on with UMass and Mass General for several years. So there was true data, clinical data, that convinced me that this was an effective therapy, not only for opioid exposed newborns, but also preterm newborns and numerous other conditions. So I was really excited about the clinical evidence. The next thing that I would say hit me was it was a brand new technology. This was something that I had never heard of before in my career. And that certainly turned out to be true once we started the process of getting regulatory clearance. And then I would say, last but not least, when you're in med device your entire career, you always have this hankering of like, what would it be like to be in the consumer market? And wouldn't it be neat to have a medical device that could transition into a consumer application or have consumer applications in general? And, there's been a few of those in the medical and life science industry over the years. Electric toothbrushes started out as medical devices, right? The Breathe Right nasal strip started out as a medical device that transitioned to a consumer device. And, I saw this, and it was an infant mattress. I mean, what could be more consumer oriented than an infant mattress? So it was really the cluster of all of those different things that kind of hit me over a couple-week period that led me to go back to Harvard and say, I know how to get this to market, and I see the opportunity. I really want it. Will you license it to me? And it worked out.
Wow. So the universe was really telling you that this opportunity was something that you couldn't ignore. And I'm fascinated by it because, you very simply put it, the idea of it being a newborn's mattress. And yet, when I really heard from some of the founding engineering team at our last opportunity to be together, the complexity that went behind it, I was floored at where the tech came from, of course, out of med tech, and we see so many good technologies stolen or borrowed from other industries like aerospace and such. So could you share a little bit about where this had been before the aha experience of John and Propella meeting?
Yeah. So to be clear, I'm the lucky person that gets to shepherd this technology into the marketplace. Its foundations actually started in 1995 with our co-founder, Dr. David Pedafar. And he wrote mathematical models and developed the first vibrating mattress. And the mathematical models were based on the hypotheses that the introduction of a random stimulation could actually improve physiological response. And in this case, a response of improved breathing, higher oxygenation levels because of improved breathing, and an improved heart rate, a rhythmic heart rate. And in 1997, he actually published results with one preterm infant that said, yes, this mattress that vibrates a certain way, stochastically is the technical term, but we can think of it as a precise random stimulation, actually improved breathing and heart rate in the preterm newborn. So that is where it started, 1995, 1997. Years later, Dr. Tadafar ended up at Harvard's Wyss Institute. He paired with Jim Nemi, and they further developed the mattress, perfected it, perfected the stimulation, and conducted some larger investigational clinical trials. And they got it to the point where they were ready with its accompanying intellectual property to shop it to some of the big med device companies. And they got really no bites. And that's part of the reason why Harvard asked me at that time, after 1 year of consulting with them, well, what's our problem? Why aren't we getting any of the big med tech companies interested in this? And from my perspective, it was easy to understand. While much was proven, still so much more had to be proven before it became a commercial reality. And there really wouldn't be any good general manager on the planet in a big med tech company that would be willing to take on that much risk over a period of years for a technology before it became accretive to the bottom line. So knowing what the hurdles were from a acceptance standpoint from the big med tech companies, I decided I could probably overcome this. What we had when we licensed it from Harvard was essentially a functioning mattress with a solid specification on its operating range to elicit the improved physiological response from newborns. But what we didn't have was a form factor that worked. We didn't have a proven safe medical surface fabric on the product. User interface was a really big deal that we had to resolve. So those were a couple of the big things. Oh, and we had an improper size. It wasn't really made to fit into standard size hospital bassinets. So it was this kind of oddball shape, if you will. But it had so much promise to it. So yeah, those were some of the big challenges that we had to take head on as soon as we decided, or I decided, to license the technology.
And that's valuable to understand too, because sometimes it takes that outside way of thinking, a different angle of thinking to understand, because all of the points that you made about areas that you had to work on or needed to be validated in the market, each of those could pull you down a rabbit hole, in terms of spending, time, resources, right? Each one of those, without the right guidance and the right oversight to know when is enough, what's that balance, how much of this do we need versus law of diminishing returns. There's some real tricks to that, especially in the young startup stage. That's valuable.
There's sure.
Yeah, and your balance to the founding team from coming from that business and commercial mindset, it seems like it was the right time to add that level of really market understanding to what was going on to date and where they needed to go.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. That said, even with my 35 years of experience up to that point, really there were several things that even surprised me during the process after I licensed the technology. In fact, I thought, oh, this is going to take two years, 2.5 years, and we'll have it on the market. Mm-hmm. And some of the surprises were the fact that indeed there was no predicate device. I assumed there might not be, but for certain there wasn't. So that meant we had to get approval through the de novo regulatory pathway, which is a much more rigorous process than having a predicate device and applying for 510K. Another thing was the FDA moved the goalpost on requirements for medical surface fabrics for neonates, changing from a qualitative validation to a quantitative test validation that really threw the entire industry into a spin. No one had a fabric or a cleaning and disinfection process that would meet the new FDA standards for this new highly quantitative test. And then there was just the engineering challenge that came through the FDA process because it was de novo, of questions they asked about the characterization of the stimulation. However, through the entire process, right, we believe we have one of the first medical surface fabrics with cleaning and disinfection that can be done in-house that meets the new FDA standard. We think we're the first and the only ones that have figured it out thus far. And also, along with the FDA, we understand and we have developed the special controls that are required for any device that decides to follow us, use our device as a predicate. We have the secret sauce in terms of vibrational characteristics that the FDA is looking for. So we're pretty proud of that.
That you should be. You should be. The materials alone, like I said, again, another rabbit hole, another area that could have completely diverted the organization. How did you tackle that?
One challenge at a time, to a certain extent. I got lucky in that I hired a really brilliant CTO, David Morrill, who joined me in 2021. And I told him, Dave, we're going to have some challenges, and I know you've never done this before. But what I had heard about him was he was just a very practical, very smart engineer, but he also had entrepreneurial experience of his own. And so him joining the company with me has made a huge difference in getting through the barriers towards the de novo authorization. And I would also say a huge part of our success has come from the funding of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. We decided early on that, hey, we really should focus on just helping initially opioid exposed newborns as our first indication. And the grants that we received from NIDA and their support all along the process has been instrumental to us getting to this point. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for NIH, SBIR funding, in this case through the National Institute of Drug Abuse.
Phenomenal. That's so encouraging for again, young companies that hyper focus and understanding that balance, hiring the right partner that can think through what you need to get done, but having that practicality about him or her and understanding that there've got to be guidelines and there's got to be a way to work through it, and then tapping into resources that are there for you. Gosh, what an amazing time. So the FDA de novo, it's been granted. What does that now cover? What are its implications?
So for everybody that's going to watch and listen to the podcast, that's just a quick reminder what de novo means. It means from anew. It is the regulatory classification or pathway for devices where there is no substantially equivalent device on the market. There is no predicate. So you're breaking new grounds, and a de novo requires, among other things, that you submit clinical data in support of clinical efficacy. And of course, you have to be prepared for a whole litany of non-clinical safety tests that are new to that product category. So yeah, we actually tried in 2022, failed, which is another part of our story. We knew that we might fail because we had a small clinical study at that time. And also this new requirement on the quantitative test for biocompatibility, specifically cytotoxicity, nobody met. We didn't meet it at that time. And we thought, well, they're going to forgive us because nobody's meeting the standard. Well, they didn't. So we subsequently submitted and, of course, received our de novo on April 4th of this year. So the classification that we created with the FDA is we are the first and only therapeutic vibrational mattress pad. That's the name the FDA is giving this new category, therapeutic vibrational mattress pad for neonates and infants. That's what we created.
Wow. Talk about trailblazing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you really have the entire new category. So how do they currently treat these babies? We hear about them, but I don't know what actually happens if these babies are born from a mother of drug addiction. They have, I know, a series of health complications. What do they do today without the Propeller technology?
Yeah, so I first want to address, and you just put it so beautifully, their mothers are suffering from a substance use disorder. And, many people surmise that, it's illicit street drugs. And certainly there are mothers that have succumbed to illicit street drugs and have a substance use disorder. But there's also quite a few mothers that were prescribed at one point in time opioids, to address their pain, and took them during pregnancy. And as a result, infant gets exposed in utero to those opioids, born, And within 24 hours, they start to experience withdrawal, right? And by the way, babies are not addicts. These are not opioid addicts. Babies are considered opioid exposed. An addict is someone who compulsively seeks something that will harm them. Babies are not compulsively seeking opioids after they're born, right? So this is why we call them opioid exposed newborns. Anyway, they begin to experience withdrawal, and the symptoms can be incredibly severe. You're talking about convulsions. You're talking about an inability to sleep. They don't want to eat. So their weight loss is more than it is for an otherwise healthy baby after birth. Constant screaming, crying, shrills, just probably the world's fussiest babies, if you can imagine, is the best way to describe. They can't be consoled, right? You can hold and hug them for hours, and they'll still be irritable, hyper irritable, if you will. So the first line of treatment for these newborns is non-pharmacological, which is what I've just described. Constant swaddling, skin to skin. It's important to note, I believe yesterday was Kangaroo Care Day. So we're wanting mothers and fathers to put babies close to skin, which is absolutely a wonderful thing and really helps with bonding, and it helps these newborns too. Swaddling, and frequent feedings. Those are some of the basics of non-pharmacological care. And then for extreme cases, which can vary between 25 and 45, even 50% of newborns that are prenatally exposed to opioids, they have symptoms that are so severe, they're actually given morphine or methadone to address their symptoms. So that's how they're cared for. It's a combination, first line of treatment, non-pharmacological care, and then in some extreme cases, they're giving opioids, they're giving morphine. So what's the problem that we saw, right? Well, until April 4th, there was not a device that provided supplemental non-pharmacological care. Well, why is non-pharmacological care through a device needed? Well, these mothers are exhausted. Sometimes they're not available because they're going through recovery on their own, and they have their own struggles. And then in the hospital, nurses struggle to have the time to really provide the care that these babies need, the non-pharmacological care. Sometimes hospitals bring in snugglers, volunteers to hold these babies, which is fantastic, but there's issues in scheduling those individuals, right? So what we've done with the FDA is we've introduced this vibrational therapy that actually helps them through withdrawal without requiring that constant touching, swaddling, skin-to-skin contact. It actually helps improve and regulate their breathing to a normal, healthy rhythmic rate. It also improves their heart rate. It takes those fast heart rates, fast breathing, and slows them down to a eupneic and eucardiac rates, as they're called. And with that, these infants recover faster.
And what's holding us back from having one of those in every hospital, every clinic that has newborns? Because I'm thinking SIDS, I'm thinking prevention of these preemies, the issue associated with regulating or attempting to regulate around, they're still growing. Some of them are coming out and they're still forming their cardiovascular and respiratory system. You'd think that this would be something that would be beneficial to every baby.
Perfectly stated. In fact, 62% of all newborns, healthy or otherwise not healthy, right, have irregular heart rates and respiratory rates at one point or another during the first 3 months of life. And it's largely a result of the immaturity of the nervous system that controls the automatic breathing and heart rates, right? The lower brainstem, the signals that go to the lower brainstem, and that continuous loop between receiving signals and sending signals to control heart rate and breathing get interrupted, right? And what this technology does is it actually boosts those signals. And by boosting those signals, you get a more healthy rhythmic rate in both heart rate and respiration rate. To your point, you're absolutely right. We believe this will become a standard of care. This will become globally the mattress pad used for all newborns through the first 3 months of life. because it's been deemed a basically non-significant risk device in every clinical trial that we've done. We've had no adverse events whatsoever with preterm infants, with drug exposed infants, with infants that have different respiratory issues. Every time we put it into a clinical investigation, we've had absolutely no adverse events. So we're excited about that. So what's preventing us? It's really knocking off one indication at a time and demonstrating to the FDA that we are clinically effective in each indication. And that's clearly what our intent is. In fact, we're currently in a large clinical trial now, pivotal trial, with preterm infants to show that we can improve or reduce apnea and also improve oxygen saturation as a result of that.
Fantastic. So we have future platform opportunity. We are right now looking at exposed opiate babies, and then now we can go to preterms that we're looking at, and the future is incredibly promising. It's a great time to lean in and pay close attention to Propeller. If anyone wants to get more information, how's best to reach you, John?
Our website, Propeller.com, is providing a lot of information for anybody who wants to contact us. There's a contact form there. I'm also available on LinkedIn. Leave me a message. Be happy to respond. We're small, we're nimble, and we're really excited about the future for us as well as all the babies and their caregivers.
100%. You're in Portland, Maine, young, scrappy, growing company just at the cusp of the rocket ship, the best time to get in. So if there's individuals that are considering career options and look at something like this and think that it's really engaging and feel a connection to it, let us know, because we'd love to make sure that Propeller has the right team and the right level of commitment to get this in the hands of all the babies out there that need them in the world, not just in the region. I'm so thrilled for the work that you're doing and so grateful for you and your team.
Thanks, Holly. Really appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you, John. I really appreciate you joining us on Tech Talks.
Have a great day.
You too. To all the audience, to everybody who's listening, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.